Well, with reaction to this verdict, Mark Steyn joins us tonight. This does, I mean, it just reminds you of a verdict 20 years ago in a case that was equally politicized, the O.J. Simpson murder trial, where the defense attorneys made it a referendum on larger injustice in American society. I want to read you a quote from one of the lawyers representing this man, in my view, is clearly a murderer, was just acquitted, as we're reporting. He said, and I'm quoting now, "This case is used to foment hate, division, and a program of mass deportation." So really, it sounds like this whole thing was recast as a political statement rather than a murder trial. So that, I mean, that's kind of the end of justice, isn't it? I mean, if trials can be subverted by national politics, then there's no hope for justice, right?
Well, I think it is a miscarriage of justice in the profoundest sense, in that Kate Steinle is dead because she went for a walk in a popular destination in her own city, and her parents will never see anybody convicted for that crime. There's no dispute. I mean, this is slightly different from the O.J. case, where at least he pretended to be looking for the real killers for the last 20 years. There's no dispute that this guy actually fired the shot or picked up the gun that then shot itself, and that this gunshot killed Kate Steinle. And there's no dispute either that this man should not have been in the country, that in fact he had been deported 6 times. And to go back to the old line, you know, about the jobs Americans won't do, every society has a proportion of murderers. Murder is a job that Americans will do, just as Dutchmen will do or Slovenes will do. You don't need to import foreigners to add to your murder population. No, this guy had a grade 2 education. We're told that the reason he got off is apparently because he's too stupid to understand what the cops were saying to him. So he gave conflicting answers about treading on the gun, finding the gun, firing at sea lions. He didn't understand. Why are we importing, and why is one political party, the entire bureaucracy, and 2/3 of the remaining political party fetishizing and sentimentalizing immigrants who can't speak the language with a grade 2 education, and setting up competing jurisdictions in this country that protect them at the expense of American citizens?
Right. Well, because they provide lower wages and handy voting blocks for those parties. So, but there's a massive cost, as you're pointing out, and as our viewers, of course, are well aware. This case gave rise to Kate's Law, as you know, much debated. But the reason it did was because the San Francisco authorities let this guy go, even after being asked by the feds to hold him for deportation. Right. They refused. So I guess it all adds up to a picture of not just, you know, treating illegal immigrants as you would American citizens, but giving them, in effect, better treatment, special privileges because they're here illegally. I don't know. I can't. It's very hard to imagine that an American citizen in Zarate's position would have been acquitted on all these charges.
No, this is basically a lifelong career criminal, and the justification for letting him go is that there's no evidence of violent crime, just non-violent crime. But the very term sanctuary city is designed to shut down the argument, because who do you give sanctuary to? You give sanctuary to refugees, to those fleeing injustice. How can there be something called a sanctuary city if it was holding up a place for criminals to hold up? The very term is designed to shut down the debate. And the reason Donald Trump is president is because he declined to operate with those constraints. Most of the other Republican nominees 2 years ago, the Jeb Bushes and Lindsey Grahams and all the rest of it, were cowed by that kind of language, by sanctuary city and all the rest of it. And Donald Trump, in fairness, recognized. I mean, I weep for Kate Steinle's parents tonight. I do not know how I could go on living in that city if, God forbid, my daughter were to be shot by someone who should never have been in the country in the first place, and is actually being protected by the entire bureaucracy, political, media class of the country at the expense of American citizens.
That's exactly right. Really quickly, it's hard to imagine now, but 2 years ago when this happened, The behavior of the city of San Francisco, allowing this guy to go free in the face of requests from the feds to hold him, that was denounced by Hillary Clinton in the middle of the presidential race. Things have changed so much in 2 years in the Democratic Party. I wonder how many Democratic office holders will criticize his verdict tomorrow.
Yeah, and if you remember, Bernie Sanders championed American citizens and American workers. It's not going to be that way in the 2020 campaign. They've moved just in 2 years.
Pretty stunning. Mark Steyn, thank you for that perspective.